All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the stream. Welcome if you're new. Thank you guys so much for joining me today and for waiting patiently for the intro to finish up. We have Dragon Knight right off the bat dropping a membership gift. Dragon Knight, thank you so much for that, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I don't know if that soundbite played or not. You'll have to let me know. I didn't hear it on my end. So let me know if the sound bites are working. But Dragon Knight, thank you for the gift. I will add that to the counter. But yeah, I hope everybody's doing well today. It's April 1st, 2025. April Fools. Did anybody fall for anything today? I haven't been looking around. I did see there was one article written up by Insider Gaming. I think it was a pretty weak attempt, honestly. They were like GTA 6 is going to release on Xbox 360. Stream is buffering. Whiskey Gaming says perfect timing for stream. Just started putting my new Blackstone together. You woke up at 6 for work and had a notification that Gran Turismo 7 leaked for Xbox. Damn. All right. Let me add Dragon Knights. There we go. Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful on April 1st. I mean, you're always going to see different things coming out for gaming related stuff. That's just, some of it's really easy. I would say most of it's easy to kind of spot and just be like, oh. But yeah, Insider Gaming was really the only one I saw where they were saying GTA 6 is coming to Xbox 360. Which is like, all right, I mean, okay. I mean, you really have to wonder if anybody actually fell for that. Muhammad, you're saying doing day and date stupid? I don't know. I don't know if I would say it's stupid. It's risky. Prospect of getting more sales, making more money, but also the prospect of hurting your own console sales. So there's give and take there, you know? We have Moonshot with a direct donation, and he says, hot take, this is my favorite gaming generation ever. PSVR 2, Portal, PC access, more games than I've ever played or owned. I'm having a blast personally. Well, it's interesting to hear that perspective, Moonshot, because there are, God knows there are a lot of people who don't have that perspective. But yeah, I mean, to me, it makes sense. You know, it does make sense that anybody who decided to, be heavily involved with this generation, it always reminds me of seeing those people who are like, bro, hey, I'm playing more games than I ever have, And we have Detective Seeds. Detective Seeds dropping 20 member gifts, bro. Thank you. I'm baffled right now. Detective, bro, I just talked about you in yesterday's video. We just interacted on Twitter. But he's coming by and he's dropping a 20 bomb for you guys.
Holy shit.
Sorry, I don't know why the sound bites aren't playing. Detective Sees, I'm trying to give you a sound bite, bro. And it's not letting me. Hold on. Let me see if this fixes it.
Holy shit.
I don't think it did. My sound bites are cooked today. What? Oh, they are working. I'm sorry. I just played it multiple times. Detective Seeds is causing chaos with his 20 membership bomb. My bad, man. But yeah, thank you so much for that, dude. Yeah, people were making me aware of you, Detective Seeds. I wasn't. It was really weird because like I saw your name pop up a couple times in the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit, and I was confused, frankly, just because I was like, I never heard of this person before, and you were talking about something related to Gears of War coming to PS5 and whatnot. I'm like, all right, well, we'll keep an eye out, and more recently, you were talking about you were stating that Ghost of Yotei is apparently aiming for a mid to late July launch, and people were people were telling me that you definitely, whoever your sources are, who you're talking to, somebody's in the know. Somebody knows what they're talking about because you got a pretty good track record. So really appreciate that, by the way, man. Definitely very kind of you to drop support like that. And yeah, when it comes to like leaks and rumors and insider information, it's really tough because I've been doing this for a long time, and man, I've seen it all. I've seen, uh, some of the most reliable people, that have stuck around and are still around and have kind of solidified themselves as the go-to. You're saying the stream is laggy. Does anybody else having issues? What's the second person saying that they were having some issues? But with that 20 bomb, that brings us up to 80 members, which is awesome to see. Thank you so much for that. But yeah, I've seen leakers that have popped up and they've been, I don't say like exposed or anything. Maybe that's a bit intense, but my brain is lagging. But we've covered so many leaks and rumors, man, and it's always one of these things where you never quite know. You never quite know how reliable a person is until they garner a track record. And that's what I found interesting is people were pointing out like, bro, we got this right. You got that right. You got this and that right. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. That's good. I mean, we're always on the lookout, We're always on the lookout for different stuff. When not even just PlayStation related leaks and rumors, but sorry guys, I'm just trying to make sure my stream isn't crashing out here. There seems to be some technical difficulties. Many Tom, you're saying it was lagging. You have fast internet. I wonder what's causing it. Chris Brown with a 20 months of membership. Chris, thank you so much for that, buddy. You're saying hot take. This is my favorite. Wait, hold on. Chris, I'm confused. I'm confused. You're saying the same thing that was in the direct donation. Did you copy and paste it? I'm so confused right now. Well, anyway, Chris Brown reiterates it, I guess, says the same thing. He says, hot take, this is my favorite gaming gen ever. PSVR 2, Portal, PC Access, more games than I've ever played or owned. I'm having a blast personally. That's really weird. I'm trying to figure out if you copy and pasted that. Lux, you're saying, is this the new term, 20 million players, not 20 million sales? That's the metric they're using, dude. Oh, you know what? That makes sense, Josh. My bad. Yo, I think it bugged out. Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, it bugged out a little bit. Hold on. Hold on, Josh. I know what happened. Man, that was weird. Okay. So for some reason in the feed, it duplicated it, which is like very strange. I've never seen that happen before. But let me go to the actual direct donations here outside of the feed. It says from Moonshot. MBG, it's really an easy fix for your PS6 concerns. All they need to do is push it to 2030. People will be ready for the PS6 by then. Hardware will be better. I could see that being a fix. I could, because I see what you guys are doing. You're trying to play the April Fool's joke on me. It's lagging. We're having issues. I see what you're doing. The idea of pushing the PlayStation 6 back to 2030, it's a viable option. I just don't know if Sony's willing to wait that long. I don't know if they're willing to wait that long, right? I mean, by pushing it to 2030, you are ensuring that by the time the PlayStation 6 hardware comes out, it'll feel like a leap, like a big leap. There's no doubt about that. You also could end up being in a better spot in terms of your pricing, right? And where you want to get it, because by 2030, who knows what the economic status is going to look like, globally speaking, but also in the US. And Hellbound 1981 comes in. Bro, Detective Seeds dropped a 20 bomb, and then Hellbound dropped the 5 to crush the goal. And we got Dragonite with a single gift as well. That brings us to 26 members. Thank you guys so much. I will update that. Immediately crush the goal. We'll be able to give Boss some treats. Hellbound, thank you so much, man. I wouldn't mind the PS6 coming out in 2030, to be honest, because I mean, I bought the PS5 Pro, and I'm happy with it, you know? Like, I'm enjoying the improvements I'm seeing on the Pro already, but I know it's going to get significantly better in the years to come. I mean, even this year, but in 2026 with getting the update for PSSR. And it's like, if this is basically what I can expect for another 5 years, I mean, I'm cool with that. I am. As you know, as long as the games continue to take advantage of the hardware, I'd be willing to wait longer for a much better PlayStation 6. But it's okay, though. If Sony doesn't want to do that, if they want to do the PlayStation 6 at the time we're expecting, 2027, 2028, I do just have that, kind of concern, though, like we were talking about yesterday, Moonshot, that it could be a tougher sell than we think. 2028 is reasonable. Yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable. I don't think it's too soon. I think you might see some people complaining that it's too soon, but I think generally speaking, most people would be accepting of that. There's like pros and cons, that have to be weighed out. Let me add that 5. There we go. So yeah, guys, we are striving for that weekly goal. We just added on to that quite significantly. We're almost at 100. We'll see if we can end up crushing this goal before the before the end of the week. Got to go hit the gym. Have a great stream, brother. Have a solid week, chat. Much love. Well, hope you have a good workout, man. Thanks again for stopping by, and thank you for dropping that support, man. It really means a lot. Definitely appreciate it. Good stuff, man. Okay, you think it's a bad idea? You think it's the worst idea to launch the PS6 in 2030? Well, what would the biggest downside to launching the PlayStation 6 later be? And just to get back really quick to what Lux said, because I feel like I kind of skipped over it. He says, is this the new term, 20 million players, not 20 million sales? Well, I would prefer to get the raw sales data, honestly. I think most people would. Obviously, we've seen many publishers and many games measure their success by players. I think it makes a lot of sense to do that for live service games. For single-player games, a little bit less so. I would definitely prefer to know how many units of Death Stranding have sold, rather than players. But I do think it's a good sign that a lot of people have engaged with the game, and so it could be a good sign for Death Stranding 2. Michael, you're scaring me, bro. You're scaring me. The unknown, you're saying the PlayStation 6 is the final PlayStation. Book it? I don't think so, dude. No. The PlayStation 6 is not going to be the final PlayStation. I think it could be the final PlayStation that finds the level of success that we've seen with the PS4 and the PS5 and even previous generations. I could see that being the case, but there will definitely be a PlayStation 7. It would be quite shocking if there wasn't. Planet Schlorpian, you're saying here 2030, welcome to the future. It'll be just as crappy as you think it'll be. You're just oozing that positivity, Planet Schlorpian. Anonymous Boss says, MBG, the PS6 will be 2027, close to 2028. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Sony already trademarked PlayStation up to PS10. So at the very least, we can anticipate they're going to try to go for a PlayStation 10. Okay, boss. I forgot, buddy. I got to give you some treats. Hold on. He's trying to remind me. He's like, dude, we hit the goal. Give me some treats. There you go, man. Enjoy. And we gotta do some exercising later. By 2030, the 2020 technology of the PS5 will be far too ancient. Yeah, I get that's definitely a risk. That's a risk. Unknown, you're saying give us reps. Well, you have two opportunities to get some reps today. If we hit 50 members or if we hit the super chat goal. So we'll see if we end up doing that. Yeah, that is a big risk. Maybe the biggest risk for the PlayStation 6 coming out later in like 2030 is it could be severely outdated by that time. I mean, the PS5 Pro, I think, would probably hold its own to a degree. But by that point, we might be looking at like, man, come on. We really got to get a move on here. You think the PS5 is ancient now? The box struggles to hit 60 FPS? On the 70th anniversary of PlayStation, we'll see the PlayStation 9. Yeah, forget the talk about PS5 or PS5 Pro. Forget the talk about PS6. We're talking about PS9. Do a poll on how many people are going to get the Switch 2. Maybe we'll save that poll for tomorrow. When it comes to the topic that I have laid out here, by the way, Sony's cutting edge graphics, we're going to be talking about an interview that Shuhei Yoshida did where he believes that Sony needs to rethink their approach to cutting edge graphics. And I thought that this would make for an interesting conversation, especially considering the Switch 2 is going to get fully revealed tomorrow. And, you know, there's always the conversation with the Switch or Nintendo, like, how much do graphics really matter, you know? And we have another direct donation here from, okay, it actually came through correctly this time. Moonshot, once again, he says, it definitely wouldn't be far too ancient because they're going to be doing cross-gen for PS5 well into PS6. I don't see any downside, to be honest, just benefits. That is a good point, Moonshot. That is a good point. We've talked about how it seems very clear that going into the PlayStation 6 generation, cross-gen is going to be expected, and it's going to be likely supported even more heavily than we saw between the PS4 and the PS5. So there is that to consider. Absolutely. That's a good point, Moonshot. That's a good point. It's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. I think that Sony, they want to find that perfect time to drop the PlayStation 6. Luna, are you serious? Dark Cloud, you're saying you like PlayStation, but if Sony waits until 2030 to release the PS6, I will already be on the new hybrid Xbox. Gamers don't like to wait for new hardware. I mean, that is kind of a risk, I would say, as well, where like if Microsoft gets their hybrid console PC out in 2026 or 2027, I mean, geez, man, like at that point, yeah, Sony would be at great risk, I think, waiting that long. So even though I don't view the Xbox console as competition for PlayStation anymore, but there's no denying that it would just be a strange look to see that happen and kind of linger. You think the cross-gen approach will only work if the PS6 comes out in 2027 and not 2030? I mean, there is the idea that game development cycles are taken obviously into account when you talk about prepping for another console launch. We'll see. I mean, I wouldn't mind if they wanted to push it to 2030, but this is coming from somebody who's, again, I've been pretty happy with this generation so far, and I'm not necessarily eager for it to end, but I do still think 2028 probably makes the most sense. I still think that's what Sony's going to go for. Yeah, cross gen, Hanzo. The heaviest hitters still haven't dropped this gen. You're in no rush. I think a lot of people feel that way. Yeah. I mean, there's still clearly a lot coming, and I think they will be probably the heaviest hitters. Some of them, anyway. Love it or hate it, cross gen is happening. I agree. Piper, you're saying if you could play PlayStation games on a hybrid Xbox, why even buy a new PlayStation? Well, because again, you know, playing PlayStation games on a hybrid Xbox that offer Steam, you're still going to be missing out on the newly released PlayStation games. And you're still going to have to wait for them to come to Steam. And you would also be leaving behind your PlayStation library, you know? I mean, a lot of people during the PS5 generation, like, I'll put it to you this way, Piper. Um, People talk about digital games and digital libraries frequently, and it makes sense because digital is slowly but surely taking over and becoming the preferred way for people to buy their games. It's been that way on Steam for the longest time. People stay on Steam and don't move from Steam for a myriad of reasons, but one of those reasons is their library, right? You know, Steam embraced digital a long time ago, PC embraced digital a long time ago. And so since then, people have just been building their libraries digitally. And if they can't take that library of games with them when they, uh, if they are tempted to go somewhere else, chances are they're gonna they're gonna leave it be. They're just gonna be like, well, I'm staying where I'm at. Piper, you're saying if you can play PlayStation games on the hybrid Xbox, why even buy a PlayStation 6? This time you dropped in a super chat. I do appreciate the super chat, bud. Um, Remember when Phil Spencer said, he said we lost the most important generation there was to lose with the Xbox One. And the reason he said that, he referenced digital game libraries. And so when you think about the idea of a hybrid Xbox coming out, that's basically a PC console hybrid that has Steam. Uh, there are some people who have this idea. They think it's just going to be like, well, yeah, why even bother playing on PlayStation or buying a PlayStation or buying PlayStation hardware? But we do have to keep in mind that tens of millions of people, who have bought PlayStation 5s have built a digital library now in a similar way that people have been building digital libraries on Steam for years. So, the idea of a Steam player being interested in this hybrid Xbox makes sense because the idea is my Steam library will come with me. It makes a lot less sense when it comes to PlayStation players, because if you choose to, let's say get that hybrid Xbox and then forego the PS5 or the PS6, whatever, you're going to have to do so leaving your library behind. Maybe some people would be willing to do that, but I would argue that most are not. Most are not. Digital Dude 25 with the $2 chat says, "Who needs a PS6? PS6 goes on to sell 70 plus million." I mean, that's the thing, man. No, people are not going to be talking about the next PlayStation in that way. At least most people are not. People tried to talk about PlayStation 5 that way. And that's the irony, is like at the beginning of this generation, that's when we saw Sony embracing the PC approach. People were trying to talk about it like, who needs a PlayStation 5? Why buy a PlayStation 5? Just wait for their games to come to Steam, right? And it turns out that millions upon millions of people, tens of millions of people, over 75 million people decided, actually, I still want to buy a PS5 for one reason or another. Um, and that's where I think, like, again, Sony kind of has this strategic approach where it's like, clearly by staggering our game releases on Steam, we're still getting people to buy the PlayStation console. But, if they want to see increases on Steam, that's where maybe they have to tweak a couple things. But yeah, I think the PlayStation 6 is probably going to sell pretty well. Potentially very well. Yeah, I remember that guy, Gravity, the PlayStation 5 Future of Gaming Showcase. By the way, guys, do me a favor if you haven't already. Please hit that like button. We have almost 250 people here watching. I really appreciate you taking time to check the stream out. If you want to help it out just a little bit, hit that like button. Lets me know you enjoy the streams. Lets me know you enjoy the content, and it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Let's see if we can push to get 100 likes. The PS6 will need true exclusives to sell it. I think there will be a couple of true exclusives, at least for a while. I think Sony might take the approach of picking and choosing, kind of like they did with the PS5. But how far they'll take that, I don't know. The big game that I always point to that I think will be a PlayStation 6 exclusive, I mean, like, you're not going to get it on PS5, you're not going to get it on PC, is Bloodborne. I think they're going to try to use Bloodborne to move a ton of units at launch and around launch. I think down the line, it will come to PC. There will be a Bloodborne remake. It will come to PC. It might even come to PS5. But it's like we're gonna use this for a year or a year and a half to push as many PS6s as we can. Something like Fizzin. Yeah, I think that people, I think, are quick to overlook Sony's current strategy. Marius with a super chat says, "I only have physical games, and I will sell them." I mean, that's the beauty of physical media, right? That's another reason why companies like Sony want to push digital more and more. Every company wants to push digital because you can't sell your digital games, really. I mean, I guess technically you could try to find a way to sell your account, but it's just not the same. With physical games, you can sell them in a more traditional way. And it would make moving over a lot easier if you're willing to part with those games. Digital Dude 25 with another super chat says, "People say the same crap every PlayStation generation, LOL." Yeah, I don't understand. Like, dude, I've talked about this, Digital Dude. I don't know why people are betting so heavily against Sony. I mean, I'm not saying you gotta love Sony, right? I'm not saying you even need to like them, but to just bet so heavily against them when it's like, bro, they know what they're doing. You know what I mean? People make it seem like Sony has not been in the console space and in the game publishing space for decades, for multiple generations. They've been doing this for a long time. And granted, yeah, there's always shifts in leadership, but that experience is passed down. That knowledge is passed down. And Sony's made their own mistakes, and they've learned from their own mistakes, and they will continue to make mistakes, just like every business will. But yeah, this kind of notion that PlayStation is going to crash and burn, I think, is frankly nonsensical, because it's just like, if there's a difference between having an honest evaluation and analysis on what could go wrong for PlayStation and how quickly those things could snowball. There's a difference between that and people projecting what they want to see happen to PlayStation. And it's the people who are projecting what they want to see happen to PlayStation that I'm not really paying much attention to, because it frankly just comes off as, like I said, nonsensical. It's like there's no evidence to back any of it up. They're just they're just wishing for it to happen, you know? J I see, I can't tell if you guys are messing with me. JMR saying, is the stream lagging? I mean, look, on my end it says there's an excellent connection. There's no buffering. Says it's an excellent connection. JMR is saying my stream is unwatchable with lag. I'm not trolling. Try to refresh it, dude. Everybody else is saying it's good. So if you're being serious and you're having a problem, try refreshing it. Maybe that'll fix it. But this is kind of interesting because it leans into the conversation that I wanted to have with you about cutting edge graphics on PlayStation. How much do the graphics really matter? How much do they mean? And one of the most disingenuous arguments that I've uh, bore witness to for years now, and I continue to see it, is people who try to make it seem like Sony's games are one dimensional. And I'm not trying to run too much defense right now, but it's just that, like, when you think of PlayStation's exclusives, you do think of graphics. You do think of very good looking, very pretty games, very, again, like kind of cutting edge games. Um, when you think of PlayStation games, you likely also think of cinematic games. But I think the biggest disappointment that I've seen with the way people talk about Sony's approach to their games is trying to make it seem like that's all you're getting, you know? And sometimes I do wonder if, like, people who are talking about this or throwing their hat in the ring, so to speak, or giving their 2 cents, it's like I have to start to wonder, like, have you actually played any of these games? Because if you played any of these games, you know that, yeah, there is high graphical fidelity. There is a cinematic presentation, but there's also a lot of great gameplay. In some cases, some of the best. And I just feel like people purposely try to kind of push that to the side in favor of being like, all Sony cares about is pretty games and graphics. Now, granted, there maybe is some desire, right, where it's like we want to see different types of games, right, different art styles, more unique games, and that's fine. I'm not talking about those people. I think that's an absolutely valid thing to put forth to PlayStation, where it's like, hey, let's mix it up a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. They should. That's good. That can only be a good thing. Variety, right? But I'm talking about the other conversations, that people tend to have, where it's like they're veering very much into territory where it's like, I think you just want to hate on PlayStation's games, you know. Marius, you're saying bring back collector's editions with discs, as Microsoft does. They should, yeah, they should do that. It's I've seen so many people expressing their disappointment at specifically Death Stranding 2's collector's edition not offering the physical disc, but I think that has a lot to do with the fact that they're actually doing the early access thing, you know, the early access thing. PlayStation 1, why all the whining from PlayStation fans? Well, because I think that what we're witnessing is, I don't want to say that PlayStation 1, I think that sounds like arrogant and also just, it's a little cringe, like PlayStation succeeded, I think, is the better way to view it, where PlayStation, I think, found success. And I'll be honest, man, it really starts to seem like people are trying to find any potential reason or weakness or whatever they can to kind of grasp at, to make it seem like the success that PlayStation has found or the things that people are enjoying on PlayStation are not really valid. And it's like, well, I don't want to make it seem like people shouldn't do that because you're free to do what you want, but it's just like it muddies the conversation too much. And that's what I don't like. That's the thing that I have found makes it so difficult right now to have good, productive, or just overall interesting conversations in the gaming space when it pertains to PlayStation is that there are too many people who want to muddy the water and create that fog, to where it just makes it so difficult to not have the conversation spiral into nonsense. Like when we were recently talking about the Xbox PC hybrid and the idea of Steam, like people, I think people were really trying to take that and really spin it into something it's just simply not, and really try to inflate it, like turn the molehill into a mountain. And it's like it's a big deal if it happens because it's like, whoa, this has never really been done before. But then to take it from that and turn it into, oh man, like this is like the giant tsunami coming in. It's like that's not what that is at all. And it's kind of frankly ridiculous that anybody would try to frame it that way. Where it's like where are you getting that? What is your logic behind this? And it's kind of like what we talked about earlier, where it's like people are just trying to make it seem like everybody's eager to just leave PlayStation or be done with PlayStation or to go somewhere else. And there's no denying that these corporations, these companies like Microsoft, like Nintendo, and even to a degree Steam, like, yeah, they want to get you to leave where you are and come to them because that helps them. That's what makes them money. That's how they run their business. But to see people kind of just construct these bizarre reasons and to kind of like come up with this stuff that seems like it comes from a place of like, again, it's a place of projection where it's like this is what you want to happen doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. Sorry. But you get enough people surrounding you telling you that is what's going to happen. Like, for example, if I were to listen to every PlayStation fan that's really enthusiastic about PlayStation and they all tell me no matter what, the PS6 is going to be the biggest success ever, it's going to succeed no matter what, it would be easier for me to lean into that and be like, yeah, yeah, it is. But there's also that part of me that's like, well, let's consider all the factors here. Let's consider every scenario based off of what we see in front of us right now. And when you consider that, you realize that, well, chances are it will be a success, but will it be as, will that success be as easily achieved as previous generations? And I think once you start digging deeper into that conversation, I think it gets much more interesting because you realize that, actually, it might not. It might be much more challenging. And that to me is what makes it interesting. Marius, you're saying Doom has early access and has a disc for PS5. What, the Doom Collector's Edition? Is that what you're talking about, Marius? Because if so, that's how. Yeah, they should do it that way. They should do it that way. If that's how it's being done, then that's proof that you can provide a physical disc even for early access. You're saying this is just the fundamental law of nature of being number one, king, market leader. PlayStation needs no defense. Defending a sore winner is the ultimate cringe. Yeah, I mean, you're probably right about that. I guess it's just a matter of trying to mitigate. Again, it's not about running defense as much as it's about, I guess, trying to mitigate how much of that that dialogue makes its way into the conversations we're trying to have. And I've kind of accepted that there's only going to be so much mitigation that can be done. Can it be truth to the stuff or are people just hating? You need to think about this. I think the two things get blended very easily these days, you know? I mean, one of the things that I notice is that people really, I mean, and I get it. I'm not saying I don't get it. I do get it. People really try to paint me, I think, is like just this rabid, insane, I mean, truly delusional PlayStation fanboy, where like I'm in a like giant bubble of delusion. And it's not a matter of trying to convince those who believe that that's not what it is, because there's no convincing them. But where things get strange is when when I begin to have discussions that a delusional individual would not choose to have. You know what I mean? Like in depth, multiple times, over and over again. A delusional person does not consider all possibilities or many possibilities. A delusional individual only sees things one way. And that's not at all how we discuss things. Now, I think what maybe feeds into this, and I think this is kind of the annoyance factor that a lot of people feel these days, is that it begins to feel more like people are trying to gaslight, right? Where it's like, if you're able to be open minded enough to say, huh, I didn't think of it from that perspective. And when I think about it from that different perspective and see it through that different lens, I can kind of maybe see the logic behind it and how that could be a possibility. But then you end it by saying, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen. And I'm actually very happy with the way things are. And I actually feel optimistic about what's going to happen. And then when you shift back to that, I think that's when other people start to kind of reveal their hand, where it's like they're not trying to get you to be open minded. They're not trying to get you to consider the alternative. They want you to think how they think. And that, I think, is what makes it very difficult to navigate the landscape these days, and to navigate social media, and to navigate and that's not exclusive to just the gaming space, but it's absolutely something that I think is reoccurring. And I guess we'll see how long it lingers. But there is some truth to that. The idea that Sony is, they did quote unquote win or whatever. Like Microsoft is like, hey man, we're done. We're bowing out. We're gonna give you our games. Um, and yeah, that there's always that kind of mentality of the underdog and whatnot. We have another direct donation from Moonshot. He says, when I'm seeing AA games, like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 achieve this level of graphics on a $40 million budget, yeah, we are reaching a ceiling and we'll need to innovate gameplay. Well, what's interesting about this, Moonshot, is, you look over, I bring this up here. Shuhei Yoshida, the former president of Sony Worldwide Studios and a key figure in PlayStation history, has suggested that in the future, Sony should change its way of thinking and focus less on raw graphical power and more on making the experience unique for its players. Yoshida explained that this aspect is crucial to the company's strategy, and although graphical power still needs to be important, the focus should shift towards other elements. He pointed out that the gaming industry has now reached unsustainable development costs, largely due to the race for the most powerful console and the most graphically advanced games possible. Up until now, PlayStation's DNA has been driven by values such as cutting-edge graphics that have continued since Kutaragi-san's time. Users have also expected that from PlayStation games, Yoshida said in the interview with AV Watch. He further explained, however, it's about time we have to reconsider that. Of course, I think it's necessary to provide the very best in terms of graphical quality to those who want it, but in order to continue to be popular with users in a broad sense, we naturally had to change our way of thinking. And I thought that this was interesting because, this is something that you do have to wonder if internally at Sony right now, at PlayStation, are there executives that are in agreement with this? The people who make the bigger, more important decisions, how many of them are in agreement with what Shu is saying here? Uh, Shu has the luxury now of not being part of Sony. He can say these things openly and freely. I mean, I would mostly agree with what he's saying. He's not saying that graphics aren't important. He acknowledges that, graphical fidelity is a major staple for what PlayStation is. I mean, there's just no denying that one of the biggest selling points of the PS5 and the PS4 is just look at how good these games look, right? And that's also part of the selling point, one of the selling points for the PlayStation 5 Pro. But as we think about like going further into the future with the PlayStation 6, the next generation hybrid Xbox and whatnot, and we also see what's about to go down with the Nintendo Switch 2, I think it is only natural to kind of call into question, like, well, how vital is this going to be going forward? And I think that we are looking down the reality of graphics are great right now. Like they look great. A lot of games look amazing. And obviously they can get better. They will get better. That's just how it's naturally going to be. But the returns are truly diminishing at this point. And I think what people are really going to be gravitating towards is not the wow factor anymore of like, oh my God, did you see how amazing this game looked? Now, what's interesting is I say this, but then again, I did just watch a couple of weeks ago that new Death Stranding trailer. And I'm not going to lie, when they showed, I think it was like a couple minutes into the trailer, they were showing off the different environments and Sam walking in these different environments. I mean, I was actually like blown away at how it looked. I'm like, my God, that looks insane. That looks insane. Like, I can't believe how good this game looks. So I can't sit here and make it seem like graphics don't matter. They literally do. I mean, like that's literally one of the biggest things that made me kind of like go, wow. I mean, there were many things, many things in that Death Stranding 2 trailer that made me go, wow. But that was one of them. And, if the graphical fidelity of Death Stranding 2 was reduced compared to what it is now, would it make me any less excited for the game? No. But having that extra kind of pop with that graphical fidelity definitely increases my excitement to play the game. It's always very pleasing to play a very graphically good looking game. But yeah, I do agree with Shu here. I think that now that we're seeing kind of like this diminishing returns effect happening with graphics, and it's becoming harder and harder to impress people and wow people with graphical fidelity alone, there's going to be, I think, a need um, to bring in something else, to kind of again help boost that wow factor, and it's going to come in the form of I think gameplay, unique gameplay experiences, um, innovation in like check out our game and look at what we're doing a little bit differently or a lot differently. That's a real challenge. You think about graphical fidelity, the progression of making things look better. It's kind of linear. I feel like when it comes to innovating in gameplay, innovating in game design, those things are not really linear. Those things, I mean, to a degree, there's linearity there, but it's much more spontaneous where it's like, when is that next innovation really going to occur? Nobody actually knows. And everybody's kind of, you know, throwing their hat in the ring, trying to figure out, maybe I'll do this or I'll do that. And some things stick, some things crash and burn, other things just kind of have a brief moment where it shines and then it's forgotten. But I think that when it comes to PlayStation Studios specifically, and talk going forward, and how Sony's going to sell the PS6, how Sony's going to keep the brand as relevant as it can be, I do think that, yeah, we're talking about some of the most talented studios in the world when we talk about PlayStation Studios. They're going to need to, I think, start thinking outside the box. And I no pun intended. They're going to have to start thinking a little bit differently, and they probably are. I don't want to listen. I don't want to make it sound like these developers are not already doing that. They are, but there just might be a little bit more pressure this time around. Where that the pressure was kind of there with the PS5, where it's like Mark Cerny, he believed that the PS5's SSD speed could potentially lead to, I mean, really unique and innovative advances in game design. He didn't say it would. He said that's his hope. That's what he's trying to set up. And he said time will tell. And we are over 4 years into the generation, and I think it's safe to say that that didn't happen. And I don't say that as to make it sound like it's he's a liar. He disappointed us. How dare you, Mark Cerny? No, it's just that that's what he placed his bets on, and he was well aware that it might be a bad bet and it might not go that way. And it didn't. And that's fine. He took a chance. you could at least give him the credit for he was trying something, but he wasn't wrong either. Yeah, it was just more along the lines of I look at it as one of these things where that was what he put, I would say, the most emphasis on, where it's like the SSD speed. And he did show examples of how it can change games and alter game design. And we saw that with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. But as the generation went on, it just seemed clear that developers weren't really taking to it in the way that we would have thought, right? Like more broadly speaking. And so I think it's going to be even more important when it comes to like the PlayStation 6 to really hone in on like, all right, what can Sony do with the PlayStation 6 to facilitate potentially a shift in game design that can lead to more innovation? That's a challenge that I think Mark Cerny is up to the task. I don't know that you would want anybody else at the helm of that, like trying to figure that out. I would want Mark Cerny there, but it's a tough one, man. I mean, when I try to think about like what could be done, I mean, we think of AI naturally, right? I think that's like the big thing right now that pops into everybody's mind is AI. Would Returnal run on a PS4? I don't know. I mean, you have to you'd have to ask Housemark that, right? What would they have to alter? Rift apart on HDDs, yeah. But this is where it's like I don't want Sony. I don't want anything to be oversold. I want it to be sold in the best possible way it can. And when I think of like upcoming games like Saros, and I think of Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, even Ghost of Yotei, Wolverine, and even Santa Monica's new IP that we have yet to officially see. I'm not looking at those games being like, I anticipate that these are going to be the most innovative games that we get. That every, Ghost of Yotei is going to completely innovate and radically change the game design of this type of game, or even with Intergalactic, right? Um, I'm not anticipating that, and I think that's fine. I don't think that we need to necessarily anticipate that. However, I do think when we zoom out and kind of look at those games in the context of these are games that are absolutely going to be used to sell PlayStations, right? They're going to need to be at the forefront and really kind of push, like, it's not, the game isn't just trying to sell itself, it's trying to sell itself and a platform and a hardware, console hardware. So this is where I do think that Sony does find themselves in this kind of uh spot where I think the games that they have lined up right now are going to look awesome. They're going to have Wolverine, like I said, Intergalactic, Stars. I think these games are going to look amazing, especially on the PS5 Pro. I think they're going to do just fine. I think they're going to do a great job at closing out the PS5 generation. But I do genuinely wonder not if the PS6 will have better looking games. Obviously, the games are going to look better. They could look substantially better. And you would hope that they look noticeably better, right? But you do have to wonder, if you see a game running on PlayStation 6, maybe like Horizon 3, right? I think Horizon 3 is a good example just because we saw the difference between Horizon Zero Dawn on PS4 and Horizon Forbidden West on PS5. What type of difference can we expect where here's Horizon 3 on, sorry about that. I got distracted by something on screen. Here's Horizon 3 on PlayStation 6, right? I mean, you have to imagine at that point that it's going to be like, yeah, the graphics are going to look better. The graphics are going to look great. Probably be one of the best looking games we ever see. But how vast will that difference graphically speaking be between here's Horizon Forbidden West running on PS5 and PS5 Pro versus here's Horizon 3 running on PS6? And it's especially true if Horizon 3 ends up being a cross-gen game where here's Horizon 3 running on PS6 versus PS5 Pro. So I think it becomes clear when you think about that there does need to be a difference, but assuming that difference isn't going to be nearly as vast as people expect, not nearly as convincing as people would hope, still acknowledging it's going to be an amazing looking game. I think the question is going to turn to, what is this game doing differently from Forbidden West? The question, I think, then kind of starts to transform into, will cross-gen hold back innovation? I mean, that's a loaded question, but it's a fair question, right? Because the first thing that popped into my mind is, well, wait, hold on, dude. If Sony comes out with Horizon 3 and you can buy Horizon 3 on PS5 and PS5 Pro or PS6, then what would it really matter? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the game needs to be different and better, obviously, than Horizon Forbidden West. That's the goal. But if the idea of innovation can only be facilitated through, we have to move forward and take advantage of this new cutting edge technology, that and only this new cutting edge technology can facilitate this type of innovation, is that completely negated by, oh no, you could just play it on PS5? It's kind of the conundrum that we've seen presented this generation already. And it seems to have had, from what I can tell, no deleterious effect on how well the PS5 is doing. And so, I don't know. Can they do it again that way? It'll be having Horizon 3 employ similar / slightly better graphics to Horizon 2, but run at 120 FPS. But will that be enough though? I mean, that's a viable option where it's like, hey, you can play Horizon 3 in all its glory running at 120 FPS. Maybe. I mean, maybe they try to push that, but 120 FPS is obviously better than 60 FPS. Like, objectively, it's better. But from what I can tell, there is still a level of diminishing return. You know what I mean? There's a level of diminishing return where it's like, the difference between 30 FPS and 60 is vast. That's like night and day. The difference between 60 and 120 is, you can see the difference, but you also might question, do I really need this in the same way that I needed 60 FPS? And it presents that kind of same challenge of like, how do we convince people they need this? We have another direct donation here from Moonshot. Moonshot, thank you for all the direct donos. I really appreciate that, buddy. You're saying, I don't think it's that graphics are going to get any worse. I think they're just not going to get all that better from here on out until maybe 2030. He's still pushing to 2030. Moonshot's still pushing the 2030 narrative here. Well, maybe at the end of the day, we're going to find out that maybe there is a lot more that can be done graphically than we realize. You know, it's hard to, I feel like it's hard to really have this conversation as in depth as I would like right now without GTA 6 being out yet. The reason I say this is because I think GTA 6 is that game has the chance of really, I think, kind of uprooting some things and really disrupting things in a good way, where it's like, there needs to be a game that comes out that just helps push the industry forward collectively. And if it's not GTA 6, then I don't know what it could be. You know, I'm just, I don't know that Sony alone, I don't know that Rockstar alone. I mean, maybe Rockstar alone could, but Sony, they could do it as well. It's just, I don't know that there's anything in the pipeline for Sony or for Microsoft or for Nintendo that's just going to suddenly do that. Yeah, so it does feel like a ceiling is being hit collectively. And I don't want to say it all rests on it's not true that it all rests on GTA 6's shoulders. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I think a lot of it does. I think it's like, this is you know, here's an example of what can be achieved under very specific circumstances. And of course, those circumstances maybe can't be replicated, but just knowing that it can be achieved might be enough to help convince people to give that kind of, that new breath, if you will. Where like, this is how long it took. This is how much money it took. This is how much time and effort it took. This is how much resource it took. You're not going to be able to do it, but we're here to just show you that it can be done. And so it's maybe like, I guess a good way of viewing is when GTA 6 comes out, it might show us where games collectively can be in the next like 5 to 7 years. I feel like that's kind of what Red Dead 2 did to a degree, where it's like, look at what we can do. But what's kind of disappointing about that is, I mean, Red Dead came out in 2018 and we're still not really seeing games match it. Not saying every game should go out of the way to match it. It doesn't make sense for a lot of games. Depends on the genre. Depends on the type of game you're making. But we still haven't. You know what I mean? Like there's not anything out there that's like, oh wow, like, this new open world game is rivaling Red Dead 2. Like, is it though? I mean, you could argue maybe Elden Ring to a degree in just terms of size, scope, scale, and just the sheer breadth of what it's doing. Maybe Elden Ring could be it. But I don't know, man. GTA 6 trailer 2 on April 31st. Do you really think other companies are going to greenlight billion-dollar projects post GTA 6? No. No, I guess not. I guess not. I mean, if they could have an online component that's as successful as GTA Online, maybe. It's interesting to see where the games industry is right now and to see the problems that are beginning to crop up. And it's interesting to think about the potential solutions, but nobody really knows. There are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. There are going to be people and companies and studios that really try and they really fail. And there are going to be others that really try and they're on to something. Switch 2 will break all sales records if GTA 6 launched on it. I don't think GTA 6 is going to be coming to Switch 2. I'll be honest. I don't think so. If the PS6 doesn't release until 2030, it'll be going up against the RTX 7090. Uh-oh. Jason says, hi, MBG. I got a PS5 disc version. Good stuff, man. How are you enjoying it? Well, I guess that's as far as I can take this conversation for now about Sony's cutting edge graphics and what they will do next. I mean, the final thing I'll say to close it, I guess there is one more thing I can say, is that they're not going to abandon, the push for better graphics. That's not going to happen. It has worked out very well for Sony. It's one of their pillars, I would say, at this point. It's not the only one. It's far from the only one, but it's a big factor. And that will continue. That will continue throughout this generation, going into the PlayStation 6 generation. And I think for as long as graphics are continuing to improve, I think they'll continue to try to be at the forefront of that. The only thing we want to make sure they don't do is over prioritize it, right? But I do generally agree with what Shuhei Yoshida is saying here. He seems to be well aware that games look amazing, and it's going to be harder and harder to differentiate them going forward. You're going to have to do something else. You have to get a little bit more creative. And I believe in PlayStation Studios. I think they can do it. Again, I don't think all of them will do it. I don't think all of them will succeed, but I generally have good faith in PlayStation Studios that they'll figure it out. Like Saros sticks out to me because it's like I think Saros is going to look cutting edge graphically, at least I would imagine. Given that they have more time and budget than ever, but it's like that game to me seems like the type of game that could present something maybe very unique, if not unique, just something that kind of pops out at you gameplay wise that you're like, whoa. And that's why I'm going to be paying very close attention to Sorrows. I'm not saying that, Naughty Dog couldn't do that within their Galactic. They absolutely could. But that's what I mean. It's just I look at these studios, I'm like, they definitely could do it, man. They could do it. Any chance of Days Gone remastered being on disc? I don't think so, man. If it sells better than they anticipated, maybe they'll consider doing a later release for a physical version. But as of right now, they have no plans, and I'm not sure why. I don't think that's a Sony decision, by the way. I think that's a studio decision. I could be wrong on that, but I think maybe they're a little bit nervous. You know, I think that right now, Ben Studio is again. These studios have to think like businesses themselves. I think they're a little bit nervous of the amount of money and resource it would take to print these discs and sell them. They can't lose any more money, dude. They just had their project canceled. So I could see it's one of these things where if they see that there's more demand for it than they originally thought, and it's, maybe Days Gone Remastered is selling better than they thought, maybe they'll be like, we should just do a limited physical run. Why not? Because most other games got it. Most other remasters got a physical release. I don't think they would go to limited run. No, that would be a bad look. I think that they would just have to just do it with Sony. I mean, it could be a Sony decision. Maybe Sony is the one being like, no, we don't want to do it. It could be that, but we're going to be talking about Doom: The Dark Ages. The previews are out. Are you guys excited for Doom: The Dark Ages? I've seen, generally speaking, I've seen a lot of excitement for Doom: The Dark Ages, and I'm pretty interested in it. I saw the gameplay. I saw the gameplay on on the developer direct, and I thought it looked good. Now, this game is coming very soon. It's coming next month. You think Doom is going to get a 90 plus on Metacritic? It's not that I've never played it, Guy Gravity. It's just I never stuck with it. I never got deeper into it. And maybe that's where I'm looking to change things now. It does, yeah. It is crazy to me too that I never got that deep into it, just because like everything about it feels like it's like, yeah, that's my type of game, bro. Alien, you think Doom is overrated? Angry Well Watcher's looking forward to Doom, or not looking forward to Doom. Sorry. Hanzo says he's been a Doom fan since the first. Well, we do have the previews that are out. So if you're wondering like how it's previewing, I have it from Push Square. They say a batch of hands-on previews have arrived for the hotly anticipated Doom: The Dark Ages, and it sounds like it'll be worth the wait. The prequel to the modern Doom series is set for launch on May 15th, 2025, and while that's not very long to wait, these previews have us counting down the days. Overall, the sentiment is very positive for id Software's upcoming FPS. Basically, all the previews we've seen agree that it's another uncompromising shooter that plays excellently, with gameplay changes that sound like a departure from the previous two titles. Many outlets highlight the shield as a fundamental difference in the Dark Ages, providing you with a versatile tool/weapon that makes your approach a little more defensible and deliberate. It can block, parry, and deflect certain attacks. You can throw it around in the arena, and you can rush down enemies. It sounds like it's core to the action in the new game. The shield seemingly does not mean you'll be standing still, though. This is Doom after all, and it sounds like you'll still be on the move most of the time. Its utility apparently extends to solving simple environmental puzzles and platforming, with some outlets comparing it to Kratos' Leviathan axe in God of War. Impressing less consistently are the sections featuring a giant mech and a dragon. These sequences seem to be included to change up the pace, but there are concerns that they aren't as fleshed out as the core action. Still, there are plenty of reasons for fans to be excited for the large open maps, to the new gameplay tweaks, to the heavier emphasis on story. It sounds like another rip roaring FPS, and we're looking forward to jumping in. And they say here, this is coming from VGC, everything that I'd hoped to expect from a Doom game. Quote, while I may not be instantly convinced by some of the game's more gimmicky elements, the gameplay of Doom the Dark Ages is unimpeachable. The changes made to movement and weapons make for a game that sits comfortably between 2016 and Eternal, and I think it's set to outshine both of them, end quote. So a very positive take there from VGC. IGN says, quote, from its satisfying shield-based combat shakeup and enticing sandbox-level structures to its Pacific Rim rocking skyscraper-sized beatdowns and its dazzling dragon-riding dogfights, the team behind Doom the Dark Ages is seemingly throwing everything but Hell's Kitchen sink into making this the biggest and best campaign seen to date in the seminal shooter series, end quote. Eurogamer says, quote, actually, it's id Software's expertise that I keep coming back to, and how nice it is that it not only successfully resurrected Doom in 2016, much to many people's surprise, mine included, but how it's been given time and resources to develop it, to reimagine it since. This is a bold reimagining, a brave departure, and even though I have reservations about some things in the Dark Ages, I do not have reservations about id, end quote. GameSpot says, quote, id Software is bringing a lot of new mechanics and ideas to the series while maintaining its hypnotic flow state. It's hard to say if they'll be able to keep that momentum as new ideas and mechanics are introduced, but it's made an excellent first impression, end quote. And then finally, Games Radar Plus says, quote, Doom the Dark Ages is, I'm told before my demo, built around the concept of stand and fight, and every moment I'm directly in control of the Doomslayer lives up to that. Taking hits and dealing them back twofold is the most aggressive Doom has ever felt, end quote. So those are what some of the previews from, some relatively well-known outlets are saying. And it sounds good, man. What's interesting about these previews to me is it sounds like it really is going to be a slower paced Doom, but it's going to pack a bigger punch. And, that to me sounds enticing. I mean, when I was watching that gameplay preview, I really like what they're doing with the shield. The shield to me is kind of selling me on it. Hell's Kitchen is Gordon Ramsay in it. Chris, you're saying for you, Doom Eternals, peak Doom? Michael Lynch with the super chat says, this Doom is definitely not for me. A definite skip. What's not doing it for you, Michael? I'm curious. Did you play the previous Doom games? It kind of sounds like you maybe played the previous games and you like them, or maybe this one isn't for you. I have seen some people saying that they're not really on board with the changes that they're making here. But I don't know. I would be surprised if I played it and I'm like, I don't like this. This is bad. I could see it maybe being a little bit more underwhelming than I expected. The metal soundtrack is enough. You did play the previous ones. Interesting. Doom the Dark Ages is truly technologically a cutting-edge game. Illegal Monkey says, this Doom definitely sounds good. I'm not a fan of breakneck speed FPS. I mean, they did also apparently acknowledge that they did not include a multiplayer. I think the first Doom, like Doom 2016, I think had an add-on multiplayer. They claim with this one they didn't do it because it would have eaten into the single player development time, which I guess makes sense. You're still bummed that Mick Gordon isn't doing the soundtrack. Mr. B, you're saying you're worried about the open level design ruining the flow of combat. Yeah, that seems to be one of the bigger concerns that some people have, is like how the game's going to flow. Is it going to flow as smoothly? But I don't know. I guess for me, I'm not really thinking about the flow as much as I'm just thinking about the satisfaction of, like, I don't mind it being slower paced. I don't mind the idea of even standing still or whatever, and like standing and fighting. To me, it's just more about the level of satisfaction of you know of I guess going through the enemies and how does that shield really feel. Like I said, I did play a little bit of the Doom 2016, and I did enjoy it. I did. I didn't dislike it at all. I just don't know why. For some reason, I just didn't pursue it for whatever reason. But yeah, I wouldn't compare Metro with Doom. That seems a bit. I think those games are too far from one another. Watch the Digital Foundry video that dropped today. Did they do it on Doom? Captain Doom America. I like it. It's all right, Michael. It's all good, man. You want somebody to cancel their collector's edition pre-order so you can buy it? Kazjam, you're saying Returnal kind of reminds me of Doom? I could see that. Yeah, I could see that comparison. You think Doom is mainstream trash? Wow, that's intense. That's a I don't know, mainstream trash. You're going to feel weird playing a Doom game. Just a lot of changes all at once. I hope it delivers a quality Doom experience still. Well, I mean, the previews are sounding good. Based off of what I don't know how much stock people put in previews, but previews can be, I think, a good barometer, to kind of tell you like if it's like, it's not previewing well at all, or there's a lot of problems, or generally speaking, people are feeling good about it. And with Doom, the Dark Ages, it seems like the general takeaway is this is really good. It's very good. So yeah, it'll probably sell really well, I would imagine. Doom's a well-known IP, very established, and it seems to have good marketing behind it too. Bought the collector's edition for PS5. Angry Whale Watcher says Doom is not mainstream trash, but it is a relic of the past. Dark Ages is more like the OG in that it's more grounded without a jump, and you're standing your ground until you need more health. That's an interesting comparison, actually. Yeah. I like the aesthetic of it too, I have to be honest. Like the whole aesthetic of like medieval Doom looks pretty badass. I like it. Apparently it does have a storyline. That's what I find kind of interesting. Apparently Doom does have a storyline. I don't really know anything about it. Like I am hoping that I can dive into this game and not really have to worry too much about playing the previous two, which I think they did acknowledge that actually because it is a prequel. We love relics. Chris, you're saying even though I'm not sold yet on some of the changes, it definitely won't be trash. It is such a talented studio, Microsoft's best studio at the very least. It'll be fun, well polished, a fun, well polished FPS. The story is you're the Doom Slayer, you slay demons. "2016 was something about harnessing the energy of hell on Mars." It's supposed to be their biggest game yet. Well, we don't have to wait much longer, man. I mean, just, what day does it come out again exactly? May 15th. So a month and a half, basically, is how long we got to wait, which isn't too long. And yeah, we're ramping up now, going into spring. A lot of games going to be coming out in a very short period of time. Yeah, it'll drop day one in the Game Pass. I guess it's going to be PS5, Xbox Series consoles, Game Pass, PC. I don't know if it's going to be on the Epic Game Store or not. You think Microsoft should give the Halo IP to id and let them make it? You think they could do a really solid Halo game? That would be interesting. I could see why people would think that. I don't know what's going to happen with Halo, man. You know, it's going to be really interesting to see what the next Halo ends up looking like. And Sal comes in and drops 5 memberships on you guys. Sal coming in out of nowhere. He's keeping today's member train going and chipping away at the goal here. So, Sal, thank you so much, man. Apparently, my sound bites are going through. That's what people are telling me. I can't hear them, so it's kind of awkward for me. But yeah, W's in the chat for Sal. I'm going to add that to the. Yeah, guys, if you haven't already, consider becoming a channel member. Okay, we're doing members content. We did a members lounge yesterday where we reacted to some of my older videos, and it was an interesting experience overall. But we're doing another members lounge today. We're going to be doing more members lounges. You know, Friday we're going to have morning with the misses. So if you want some of that members content and you want to partake and kind of, I guess, have access to the whole other side of the channel, consider becoming a member. If you're not a member, you know, maybe you'll get a membership gift. Consider gifting memberships. We're trying to hit a weekly goal. I don't know if we'll hit it, but we'll continue to push for it. Sal just brought us up to 90 on the day. Not on the day, sorry. On the week so far. Really appreciate the support, guys. I can only do what I do here because you guys make it possible. And I think, what are we at now? 32. Doom is a legacy IP. Expect it. Or expect it. Respect it, plebes. I mean, you got to show some respect. Can't stand it. You got to show it some respect. At least I think so. I mean, I would consider Doom mainstream at this point. Yeah, I would say it's, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, a lot of my favorite games are mainstream. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. I mean, it's a good thing. Brandon, you're saying the Switch 2 will easily sell like hotcakes? Yeah, dude. Switch 2 is going to be, things going to be selling like crazy. It sounds like it's pineapple on pizza for some. What's ironic is I love pineapple on pizza. You feel for Xbox fans having to see their exclusives on PlayStation while PlayStation is keeping them on the tenor hooks with the PC release. I mean, I'm ultimately not surprised that Doom's coming to PlayStation, man, because I was speculating, you know, like almost 2 years ago. Well, not 2 years ago, but like a year and a half ago. I was speculating that, you know, as soon as Microsoft even talked about potentially going more multi-platform, I was like, yeah, I could like it. The next Doom game seems like an obvious one that you're going to want to put on PlayStation because it's either that or you go out of your way to take it from PlayStation. The music, yeah, I mean the music, the metal is it's a great selling point for me. If you're not in the metal, I could see why you're indifferent to it, but it's a great selling point. Oh, and by the way, guys, if you haven't already, please take a moment and hit that like button. We're sitting at 108 likes. Hitting a like button lets me know you enjoy the stream. It helps with YouTube's algorithm. So if you haven't, please just take a moment to do that. You know, people who main on Xbox, they have no clue about this stuff. They just like the Xbox. Yeah, that's not surprising, right? Because there are, just in the same way that there are people who play on PlayStation and have no idea about anything that's going on that we talk about, that also exists for Xbox as well. When did Doom leave PlayStation? The past games are on PlayStation. No, Doom never left PlayStation. What I was saying is if Microsoft went through with their original plan with Bethesda to make games exclusive, that would have meant making the next Doom exclusive. And in that case, it would have been taking it off of PlayStation. But, obviously they didn't do that. This month, PlayStation is releasing one of their exclusives on PC, and Microsoft is releasing some of their exclusives on PlayStation. The old gaming world is over. Turns out, Sony and Microsoft were the ones moving the goalpost the whole time. It was them the whole time. How didn't we know? How couldn't we see it? How could they move the goalposts? You play wherever the games you're interested are. I just seen the chat Nintendo wins. Disc rot is apparently real, dude. Yeah, I've been seeing people talk about it recently. I've been seeing some videos pop up. MBG new term goal posers. Did you mean to say goal posters? Or did you purposely say posers? You do think PlayStation is coming around to multi-platform and its benefits, though? Well, yeah, they are. I mean, I think anybody who doesn't see that is in a little bit of denial. I just think, there's two types of people, I think. Well, there's three. Person number one is the person who's in denial. The person who can't see that, like, Sony is getting a bit more comfortable, being a little bit more multi-platform. There's that person. There's person number two, who is the opposite of that. They're not in denial, but they are not living in our current reality. They're not living in our current reality. They believe they're living in the future, where they are seeing that Sony's getting a little bit more comfortable with multi-platform and making the concrete and conclusive decision that, well, Sony is full third party and full multi-platform, and like just taking it and sprinting all the way to the end. And then person number three, I would say, is the most rational person, which is the person that can see that Sony is getting more comfortable. They're not completely against multi-platform because they're doing it to a degree, but there is a strategy behind it, and there's a deliberate approach to it. Alien Isolationist, are you saying I'm high? I don't know if you're talking to me or not. Any crazy surprise tomorrow? I mean, maybe in the form of something first-party Nintendo related. I mean, Sony's not going to do a hard shift into being multi-platform because it literally doesn't make sense for them at all. If their console was on the ropes, if the PlayStation console was struggling and it was on the ropes and their games were floundering and not selling at all, maybe in that case you could see Sony make some kind of hard shift. But right now it just simply doesn't make sense. Things are going too well for PlayStation for them to put more than one or two eggs in that basket. What is your evidence that Sony is going multiplat? There is no shift. Well, hold on, Alien Isolationist. What I will say is that the evidence comes in the form of something like Lego Horizon launching on Switch. The evidence comes in the form of, I would say, not necessarily Death Stranding going on Xbox. I don't count that, actually. I think Sony, again, that's a contractual agreement. But I think the evidence comes in things like Yeah, boss is messing with the he's messing with the curtains. The evidence, I think, comes in the form of games like Patapon and Everybody's Golf, and Sony just basically saying like, yeah, Bandai Namco, you could take this and put it in Nintendo's event for all we care. But see, this is where we have to be able to accept that two things can be true at one time. It can be true that Sony put a first party game on Switch, and it can be true that a first party game is going to launch on Xbox, assuming nothing changed with something like Marathon. These two things can be true because they are, but you can also say, but realistically, Sony's not actually going multi platform because if you were to say that they're going multi platform, the insinuation, come on, get down. The insinuation there is, well, you can expect the heavy hitters. You can expect the more important games. You know, the single player games. You can expect these to be multi-platform as well. And it's like, well, let's just get down to it, Alien Isolationist. The insinuation is that so Sony's doing the same thing Microsoft is. And the answer is no, they're not. They're two different things. They just simply are. You can't look you can like that's basically the equivalent of let me ask you this. Would you say that when it comes to exclusive games, Nintendo and Sony are doing the same thing? Would you say they are? They're the same. Nintendo has exclusive games, PlayStation has exclusive games, so they're the same. Would you say that? Would you say yes? Or would you say no? I think most people would say no. Most people would say they're not the same because Nintendo's games are only like they're not going anywhere ever. You think the answer is yes? Well, see, the question doesn't really matter. Only only in situational conversations like this, but that is a distinction without a difference. I think what it really points to is people are going to make their own minds on how much it matters, right? Like people are going to say they're not the same because Sony's games are not permanently exclusive. It's only a matter of time until they go to PC. Therefore, they're not exclusive. Even some of their games, like like we referenced, are going to other platforms like Patapon and the Lego Horizon. But somebody else might say, yeah, no, they're the same because they're exclusive. Because if you want to play Ghost of Yotei or Death Stranding or whatever, it doesn't matter if they're timed. Like they're still going to be exclusive, and they're going to sell hardware in the same way that Nintendo's exclusives are going to sell their hardware. So it's not a matter of trying to, I would say, definitively tell somebody like, no, this is what it is. It's a matter of you just have to be able to look at something for what it is, acknowledge it, and then after that, you could call it what you want, but you got to acknowledge what it is, right? First, you can't overlook that, and that's why I just think it's important to not, again, kind of muddy these things unnecessarily. The question is, what is the threshold to be considered third party? See what I mean? Like everybody's going to have a different threshold. I see people right now saying Sony is third party. I see people saying right now Sony will never be third party. I've seen people say as soon as the first game that was announced to come to PlayStation from Xbox with no other game announcements, people immediately saying now Xbox is third party. But when Sony does something like, like with Lego Horizon or Patapon, they're like, no, that's not third party at all. And it's like this is what I mean, where it's like we need to be able to come to some kind of, but that's not going to happen because every groups of people have already made up their own minds. All I can do is tell you what I think. What I think is that um, Sony is exclusive until they're not. I just, to me, everything it's all about timed exclusivity. It's all about leveraging that time period and extracting everything you can out of it. And I think that that's the strategy. And so, Death Stranding 2 is a prime example. One of the topics is Death Stranding reaching 20 million players. Those 20 million players were not on PlayStation. About 5 million of those players, maybe 6, were on PlayStation. If I recall correctly, we got the sales numbers of Death Stranding on PlayStation. It was about 5 million over a couple of years, I think. The 20 million comes from we put it on PC. We re-released it for PS5 with the director's cut. We put it on Xbox. We even had it on Game Pass PC at one point. We have it on iOS. We have it on Mac. And that's how they get to the 20 million players. There's no way the game did not sell 20 million copies. But what that, does that mean that, well, this must mean Death Stranding 2 is a multi-platform game. Right now, it's not. At launch, the answer is no. For potentially the first 6 months, for potentially the first year, the answer is no. And so those 20 million players, if they want to play Death Stranding 2 at launch or within that launch time frame, they're going to have to buy a PS5 to do it. And Sony's going to leverage that. That's the strategy. They want to convince you, like, hey, if you want to play this, come buy a PS5. When the sales drop off, maybe they'll drop off after 6 months. Maybe they'll drop off after a year. It's hard to say what kind of tail this game will have. But at some point, yeah, it's going to go to PC. At some point, it's going to go to Xbox because Kojima owns the Death Stranding IP. And there's clearly a deal in place here or contract that once that contract is up, this game's going to go everywhere. So the threshold has to be determined by the individual where, again, it really only matters in the conversation. To a consumer, all you want to know is, can I play Death Stranding 2 or not? So it does kind of matter, right? Where it's like, you're going to be forced. Like, if somebody's asking the question, where can I play Death Stranding 2 at launch? The conversation about exclusivity does need to pop up so that way the consumer is informed. If the consumer doesn't want to be informed, then that's on them. But if you're trying to be an informed consumer or you're trying to inform somebody, you have to tell them, like, this game is going to be exclusive for an undisclosed amount of time, and you can only play it on PS5. But at some point in the future, 6 months, year and a half, 2 years even, it's going to be everywhere. So you make the decision. How important is it for you to play this game day one or as soon as possible? Or are you okay waiting? And so I think when you look at it like that, when you look at it through that lens, and that's not even looking at it through a lens, like that is just the reality. I think people want to try to distort things sometimes where it's like, well, see, this is what makes PlayStation better or whatever because they have that exclusivity and Xbox doesn't have that. And it's like, I mean, I guess, but in reality, it's just like these businesses are just doing what's going to best serve their bottom line. Because the reality for Sony is that trying to use Death Stranding 2 to sell PS5s serves Sony's bottom line better than not. Microsoft using Doom to try to sell Xbox consoles does not serve their bottom line the same way. So it's just a fundamental difference in strategy. I think a lot of us know this, but I still see the way some people approach these conversations, and I think that some people just maybe haven't really accepted the fact that Sony and Microsoft are not doing the same things anymore. You could look at it as Microsoft went all in, Sony's putting a couple in, right? Maybe just a few. Microsoft put all their chips in, Sony's just putting a few chips. It's not the same. And I think that Maybe that's a good analogy to use to illustrate it. Again, PC is not a console, so console exclusivity is a thing. Every Xbox exclusive is on PC day one. Well, see, that's a you are technically correct. I cannot argue with that fact. It is a fact that a PC is not a console. You are correct. But I guess this is where I guess we get into a bit of the semantical. Is that a word? I'll just say semantics. This is where we get into the semantics of it, where it's like, if you were to look at PC as, a PlayStation game launching on PC, and you say, well, it's okay, it's still a timed console exclusive. You're not wrong, right? You're not wrong in that there is a reason why Sony is not willing to put any of their games seemingly willingly on Xbox, because there is a difference. The console space is the console space. The PC space is the PC space. But I guess just from a more broader perspective, understanding that, trying to understand that PC players are not going to look at what Sony is doing and say, yeah, that's still exclusivity. They're not. From what I can tell, they're not going to do that. Almost every conversation I've had with a PC gamer who's interested in playing PlayStation games, they basically lump timed exclusivity into the same basket as non-exclusivity. And I understand that. But it's also, see, this is where I'm saying, people say I'm a centrist at times, and this is where I am, where it's like, I can see both sides. Like, I can understand why a PC player doesn't view Sony's games as exclusive anymore, and they just say they're not exclusive, right? And console exclusivity doesn't matter either. I can understand that, but I can also understand the other side, where you're looking at it from the perspective of, no, it is still technically exclusive through the console because it's not available on any other console, and PC is not competition, so it kind of exists in that space, and I see that too. The real question that I guess that has to be asked at the end of the day is, again, from the consumer level, like, how does this affect you? And for me, the way it affects me is that, yeah, like, I'm going to be there day one for Death Stranding 2 no matter what. I'm going to be there day one for Ghost of Yotei no matter what. Now, if that changes, if Sony comes out and says, like, we're going day and date with PC, I don't know that changes much for me, because and this is where you maybe can see the distinct difference between the console space and the PC space, where it's like, I'm probably still going to play on console. So, like, is it going to hurt me if Death Stranding 2 is available day one on PC? No. Would it hurt me if Death Stranding 2 is available day one on Xbox? No, it wouldn't. Like, it wouldn't do anything to me. What would it do to Sony and their strategy in the console business? Well, that's a whole nother conversation. That could hurt Sony. That could hurt Sony's console. And so if you kind of like put these pieces, in order, it's like, okay, so I'll put it to you this way. I don't want to see Sony get the PlayStation console into a position where I have to have conversations about what's going to happen to my game library, because that's the position that Xbox players are in right now. I've seen a myriad of Xbox players talking about their not extreme concern. I'm not going to over exaggerate here, but some level of concern of, like, what's going to happen to my library? With Microsoft making all these radical shifts. And that is the result of a platform holder not being able to successfully sell their console and leverage exclusivity to sell the console in enough volume to avoid what's happening right now. And I would prefer Sony doesn't find themselves in that position. If they do, they do, right? But that's why I'm not necessarily advocating for like I'm not out here saying like Sony, you should put Death Stranding 2 on Xbox day one. I wouldn't if they did, if they were like, yeah, we're just gonna do it, okay. Whatever, bro. Like, that's not gonna make me hate my PlayStation and be like, I'm not playing this thing anymore. That's not gonna make me a PC gamer. However, what does make me wonder is, Sony, if you put Death Stranding 2 on Xbox day one, don't you think that might prevent some people from buying your console? And the ripple effect that could have, where what message are you sending? You put Death Stranding on Xbox day one or PC day one as well, then people are going to naturally come to the conclusion, well, then I guess Ghost of Yotei is next. Intergalactic, Wolverine, Saros, they're all, they're no longer exclusive to PlayStation. I don't need a PlayStation to play these games anymore at launch. I can even go get another console to play these games. You can very clearly see, like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see how if Sony's in the business of selling console hardware, which they are, and that's where they make the bulk of their money, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see how deciding to take those games and put them day one on another console, especially a console that's very similar to yours in terms of performance and what it does, could end up hurting your own console and making people decide, you know what, I was going to buy it, but now maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to go buy that one instead because that's where I want to go. Or I'm just going to go to PC or whatever. Like that's, and how that affects me as the consumer is like, well, I don't want, as somebody who prefers to play on the PlayStation console, that's where I made my investments. There is a level of, well, I'm looking at what's happening at the collapse of the Xbox console, and it's not good, dude. Like, it's not good. Like people are now wondering, like, what is the future of their game libraries? What is the future of the platform? The future of the platform and the console, the platform, the storefront, all of it is in question, and that is because the console sales have collapsed and have forced Microsoft's hand to find a different way to make money. If that same thing were to happen to PlayStation, then PlayStation players, people who invest in the console and the console ecosystem in the PlayStation Store, are going to be faced with that same scenario. And that could be a problem, like for people, again, who are heavily invested in the PlayStation ecosystem. So now you're saying if PlayStation puts Death Stranding 2 on Xbox, it will be the downfall of PlayStation. So you're giving Xbox, the console was dead, the power to take down the king, PlayStation, LOL. No. See, I'm not saying, look. If Sony came out and said Death Stranding is the only game, they would. These are all hypothetical scenarios. They would never speak this way. But if they came out and said Death Stranding is the only game that we're putting day one on Xbox, no, I would be like, cool. I hope they enjoy it. Like it's a great game. It seems like it's gonna be a great game. That's one thing, but because like what I'm describing is exactly what Microsoft tried to do in a way. But that's not how that would go down. The way it would go down is Sony would just do it and not say anything about it. And then the internet and every single onlooker would be like, oh yeah, there you go. And that's what happened with Microsoft. Like we literally witnessed this in real time with Microsoft, where Microsoft tried to control the conversation and they couldn't. They couldn't because it's like, we know, bro. Like you can't come out here and tell people it's just going to be 3 or 4 games. We know it's not. Everybody knows it's not, except the people huffing the most hopium or whatever. We know it's not, and you can't control that message. There's no way. It's impossible because the message is made clear from the start. And to be honest, I think this is why Sony has not put anything on Xbox. I do. I think that when you look at something like why not even Helldivers? Why not even put Helldivers on Xbox? I think it's because we're not trying to send that message. We're not trying to send that message because we can't control that message. And I think that's the reality. I think that the reality is Sony has this fear that if they at any point start to put any of their games onto Xbox, even if they're, even the notion of something like Horizon Zero Dawn, a game that's, I mean, who's buying a PlayStation for Horizon Zero Dawn? Well, they did just remaster, but you get what I'm saying. I digress. The notion of taking years old games and being like, let's just sell a couple million on Xbox. It's the messaging that the message that sends is something Sony cannot control, even if they tried. They can't. The PC situation, I think, is just different enough. Like, PC and console are just different enough that I think Sony felt confident that we can control this message. And they did. Like, I've been telling you that PC game, like, every PlayStation game that comes out, unless there was some dramatic shift internally, every PlayStation game that comes out will go to PC. Everybody knows this. Just don't know when, but we know it's going to happen. Sony has effectively controlled that message, because if they didn't, we should have seen a mass exodus of the PlayStation console for people leaving to go to PC. Or at least that was the assumption. Now, if they started doing exact precise timeframes where every game is now going to be 1 year timed exclusive or 6 month timed exclusive, you might see more people leave more quickly. But how would you then convince the overwhelming percentage of PlayStation owners to switch to Xbox? That implies Xbox has something, games or features that PlayStation needs to fear their audience discovering. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, is it possible? Is it possible? Because again, we're trying to, when we have these discussions, like I said, I try to evaluate all of the different possibilities. Is it possible that Sony could do what Microsoft is doing and nothing would change for the PlayStation console? Yeah. Yeah. If you were to ask me that earnestly, I would say, yeah, that's a possibility. Basically, what I'm describing is if Sony does the same thing they do for PC, essentially for Microsoft, for Xbox consoles, is it possible that it would have no deleterious effect or minimal deleterious effect on the PlayStation console? I would say, yeah, that's a possibility. However, the alternative is it devastates your console. I think it's the alternative and the fear of that alternative being a reality. Because it's like, if you're Sony, do you get baited that way? Where it's like, well, Sony, the only reason you wouldn't put your games here is because you're afraid we can catch you. And I'll be honest, listen, if the question is, does Sony fear Microsoft? The answer is yes. Yes, they do. Because they should, because they would be absolutely foolish to downplay their rival, a rival company that, I don't know if I don't know that they're a rival now, but why do you think Sony tried so hard with the PS4? Why do you think we've been down this road? Like, we've seen what happens to Sony when they don't fear anybody. The PS3, the launch of the PS3 is a Sony that has no fear of anybody. That's the Sony that says, we're the king, we're untouchable. You'll get a second job to buy this thing. We've been down this road, and Sony learned real quick that, oh, you done fucked up. Like, you messed up this time. It's not to say that they're shaking in their boots or whatever. No, Sony probably feels very good. Like, yeah, it feels like we kind of won. We won or whatever. But they're not looking at Microsoft being like, we don't care at all now. Like, we're not even looking at you anymore. Like, no, that makes no sense, because it's like that it's companies that operate like that end up finding out, sir, you're not at the top anymore. You're like 6 rungs down now. It's like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, they're existing in their own bubble. We've seen that happen time and time again with many corporations, with many brands, and it always happens the same way. It's hubris, it's, arrogance, it's just, thinking you're untouchable. The moment you think you're untouchable, you get touched. Quote of the year so far. And Sony is absolutely not immune to that. So I guess the bigger picture point that I'm trying to make here is that Sony's hesitance, Sony's slow process, I think reveals their mindset. And that is that they they have fear, as they should, that one wrong step, one big misstep, and it all maybe comes crashing down, right? You get you get too confident. You feel too sure of yourself. We could do whatever we want and we'll still sell PlayStations. And then suddenly you stop selling PlayStations. These are all things, again, that we've literally witnessed. And I think Sony is their very strategic and calculated approach and experimental approach as well, I think reveals that they do have a healthy level of fear that, they're going to still try to make as much money as they can. They're still going to try to, you know, be confident, I guess, in what they're doing, but they are not going to just start. Well, then again, Hiroki Totoki takes over today, so maybe, who knows? Maybe he's the most arrogant, confident, crazy CEO we've ever seen, and God knows what he'll end up doing. But PlayStation likely has a threshold number for an Xbox install base that they would feel comfortable putting their games onto the platform. That's very interesting. See, that's like the complete opposite, right? It's the complete opposite of, like, it turns out Sony has no fear, and it's actually just not worth the squeeze. I don't believe that. I'm sorry, dude. I can't believe that, because Sony seems like they actively want. Yeah, I don't know. You know what though? Yeah, that's the tough one. That's the tough one right there, because I was gonna say it seems like they want nothing to do with Xbox. Like, they're willing to. I've seen people bring up the point that Sony is willing to cut off entire countries, like, just literally, like, yeah, we don't want you, because you don't. We can't have you make a PlayStation Network account, so we're not even gonna sell our game to you. We've seen Sony do that for their own um, for their own ambition. So I understand why people are like, well, if Sony's willing to do that, what makes people think that they're even remotely willing to give Xbox anything? But there is also the reality that MLB is still on Xbox, and Sony sees the numbers. They make money off of Xbox that way. Death Stranding. Again, these are IP that Sony doesn't own. Death Stranding. But even just now, bro, like, Patapon isn't releasing on Xbox. Like, not even, like, Sony won't even say yes to Patapon, bro. So I don't know, man. It's, are we looking at a situation where Sony made the decision that we're not putting Patapon, we're not going to let Bandai publish Patapon on Xbox because there's just not enough Xboxes? Or is it just, yeah, is it like spite? Like, no, F them. We're not giving them Patapon. The I would say the history between Sony and Microsoft maybe gives us a clear answer. And that is that they are not good friends. They never have been. There is a partnership now in that Microsoft is letting Sony know, you're going to make some money off of us. We're going to make money off of you, but you're going to get some money too, and you don't have to do anything. I think Sony's like, all right, we're not doing that for you, but sure, make your money, and we'll get a cut. But I don't think that suddenly makes Sony go, you know what? Nah, here's Helldivers. Here's Patapon. I think Microsoft wants that, to a degree. We know Phil wants that. Phil was complaining that Sony wouldn't give them Helldivers. And I get it because, Phil's out here being like, Sony, are you serious, bro? We're giving you we're basically making it we're making it clear we're going to be giving you all our games and you don't want to give us Helldivers. I think Sony's just over there like, sorry, bro. And I don't think I don't know. I don't know. I do not know, man. You do have to wonder if Xbox was sitting. The conversation is too messy. It's too messy. It's too all over the place because it's like, I was going to say, let's imagine Xbox was sitting at 60 million sold right now. Then would PlayStation put Helldivers 2 on there? But if Xbox was sitting at 60 million sold, would they have decided to go full multi-platform? Probably not. So all these things negate each other, and at the end of the day, who the hell knows what's going to happen? I just find the conversation interesting. I won't lie. I do find the conversation about exclusivity, seeing where things are headed, platform holders, console manufacturers making different decisions. I think there's a lot of people who like to be very hyperbolic about it to get attention for their own gain. And that's fine. So it is what it is, but I'm not interested in the hyperbole. I'm not interested. At least most of the time I'm not. Every now and again it catches my attention. But generally speaking, I'm just more interested in like really getting a better understanding of like what changes are occurring, why are they occurring, and how does it not just how it affects me, because I usually have a pretty good understanding immediately how it affects me, but how it affects the industry as a whole, how it affects the console business, how it affects, the storefronts, the platforms, how it affects the players on these different platforms. These are all things that I find incredibly fascinating, and I think a lot of other people do too. But unfortunately, these things are the answers are slow to reveal themselves. So we have to kind of just wait, and watch it slowly unfold and play out. And in the meantime, I will be doing a lot of speculation. Uh, Alien, you're saying, Brandon, you don't work for Sony and your opinion doesn't mean anything to me. Oh, what's he saying? There will not be a PSVR 3. I mean, I again, that's one of those things where it's like, if you were to ask me, do I think it's likely? I don't think it's likely. But I could still see Sony maybe like trying to hold on, because I think somebody at Sony still believes that VR is going to take off one day. Surely somebody there. I mean, maybe they're not there anymore. Maybe that was Jim Ryan. Maybe he's gone. Well, he's not. Maybe he's gone. He's not at Sony anymore. Maybe Jim Ryan would have greenlit PSVR 3. Maybe Shuhei Yoshida would. The question is, will Hiroki Totoki and Hideaki Nishino greenlight PSVR 3? Maybe, but I'm not sure. I think that's a 50-50 coin flip, If you look at the sales of PSVR 2, it might tell you no, they're probably not going to, but games sell on PSVR 2. That's the thing that's interesting, is developers have revealed that PSVR 2 players buy a lot of games. So, that could be a difference maker. It'll be interesting to see how The Last of Us Part 2 does on PC. You're going to try it on the 4090. I'm curious to see how it does, because I don't think The Last of Us 1 did that great on PC. I think it did like okay, but the port was kind of broken. So I think that negatively impacted it. If this port comes in clean and stable and optimized, I wonder if there'll be any big difference. Also, the fact it's launching at pretty much the same time of the HBO show, that'll be interesting to see if there's any synergy there. Yeah, PSVR 2 did just get like a permanent price cut, so I do wonder if that will positively impact sales. I can agree with that. Yeah, I think it's better not to think in like black or white. I think it's better to be a little bit more nuanced and try to, again, I think it's good to consider different possibilities. I think sometimes people confuse like considering different possibilities as erasing your own convictions or beliefs, and it's like no, it's good to be it is good to be open-minded. Yeah, I mean, there is a fear of being too open-minded that you can't think for yourself at that point. Everything that enters your brain is just like, yeah, I guess that's real now and true. But no, there's a balance, like have your own beliefs, have your own convictions, feel how you want to feel, but try to be a little bit more open-minded as well and consider different things. I think I think that's the ideal way to go about it. But, when it comes to talking about stuff like this, I understand that there's some very passionate people, of course. There always is. You have a better perspective on the gaming industry by owning and gaming on more than one platform. True. True. Sony dropped 7 PSVR 2 exclusives in 2023. You'd get PSVR 2 just for GT7 and RE4. I did play both of those in PSVR 2, and they're very good. But especially RE4, dude. I mean, RE4, I can't imagine there's anything that beats it, honestly. RE4 Remake. It's crazy how well that game translated to VR. They did a really good job. It makes me wonder if Capcom will continue to support VR2 the way that they do. Who do I think is making more? Sony from Xbox games to PlayStation, or Microsoft from Sony paying for Azer? I thought Sony doesn't use that. I thought Sony uses don't they use Amazon Cloud? Their cloud infrastructure? Hold on. By the way, guys, we're going to do like a last call here for any memberships or membership gifts. We're sitting at 32 on the day, which is great to see. We are 10 away from reaching 100 for the week. So getting 1/3 of the way there for the weekly goal. So I'm going to, encourage you guys. Let's see if, I don't know, if anybody wants to do it, they do a single train or not. Somebody could just drop 10. I don't know. Or just get none at all. That's fine too. But see if we can maybe end this let's say this Tuesday, being 1/3 of the way there. But we are going to be moving to a members lounge in just a little while. So we're going to wrap this up soon and head over there. Play a nuclear launch April Fool's Day prank. That doesn't sound good. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just having to put on a big visor that makes your face sweat and you get fatigued easier makes me prefer to play on a flat screen most of the time. We talked a little bit about the VRR issue with PS5 yesterday, mainly in a video that I put out. But yeah, Sony should fix that. I don't know if it's a PlayStation 5 bug or if it's on a developer side. I don't know, but either way, hopefully it gets fixed. Chase says, guys, throw in a double upper decker Zin and gift me a membership. Your mom upgraded the living room to a 2024 OLED. The difference is insane. Let me go see if there's any other April Fool's Day jokes. John Wick 5 is officially happening. Keanu Reeves will return. A story has been decided. Chad Stahelski is directing. Surely that's not April Fool's. I think that's real. That's not April Fool's. That's a real thing. I'm not seeing too much. Yeah, no, this John Wick thing is real. That's going to be interesting. I'm not going to spoil anything for John Wick, but it's going to be very interesting to see how they pull off a John Wick 5. Very interesting. Ecstasis seems to be teasing Cyberpunk news. We're going to find out Cyberpunk is going to be available on the Switch too. I could see it. The Switch 2 dock uses a Realtek RTD 2175N CG DisplayPort V1.4 to HDMI 2.1 protocol converter, 4K 60 support. Oh, okay. So I guess this seems to confirm that the Switch 2 will offer 4K support, docked anyway. Yeah, it was going around yesterday that the Switch 2 might not offer 4K due to, I think, certain dev kits apparently not outputting. But people were pointing out that sometimes, dev kits don't have all the features. I mean, that would be a weird one to not have, but it seems based off of this leak on the Famit boards that it is going to output at 4K. Yeah, that was a little bit strange to me. I don't know if I believe that. I'm like, come on, you're telling me this Switch 2 is going to be coming out like mid 2025. Like, there's no way it can't do 4K, right? Like, even at like upscale, like just the idea that it can't output anything at 4K just would, I'd have to see it to believe it. You're gonna have to have Nintendo confirm 4K before you believe it. Did the base PS4 do 4K? No. I thought it was more powerful than a base PS4 though. I thought the Switch 2 was supposed to be like a equivalent to like a PS4 Pro. But I don't know, man. What I do know is nobody's buying the Switch for the power factor. Somebody says explain it in Fortnite terms. Somebody says you might get 120 FPS support if Epic optimizes it well enough. Somebody says Skibbity, Ohio, Riz, and Tomato Town. Okay. I love Reddit. Don't you just love Reddit? Yeah, I think it is. I think that's what we've been hearing. It's going to use DLSS. I think that's what we've been hearing. We have a 20 euro super chat from Instant Messenger Sama. Thank you so much for that, buddy. Saying, off topic, I'm still sad that we only got a Matrix tech demo and not a full game. Apparently, Warner canceled more than 2 unannounced Matrix games. Sadly, Matrix 4 tanked so bad they pulled the trigger. Damn, where'd that information come from? They had 2 Matrix games in development that got canceled? I can believe it. Yeah, it did seem like they were maybe gearing up for some type of major comeback for the Matrix, and I'm not gonna lie, I was in on it. Like, I believed in it. I was concerned, and then I saw the movie, and I was like, oh god, oh no. That is really depressing. I mean, the Matrix tech demo was awesome, and the biggest thing the Matrix tech demo teased was the idea of like a full blown next generation Matrix game. But You know what's you talk about the Matrix games, dude. Do you remember the PS2 Matrix games? There were two. There was or two that I remember. And I know that there was a Matrix Online game as well, but I remember the Matrix God, what was it? It was the first one where you didn't play as Neo. What was that Matrix game called? Yeah, that's the one that immediately comes to mind, Kaz Jam, is Matrix Path of Neo. Holy shit, that game was awesome. I feel like the first Matrix game that they put out, you played as like I don't even remember the characters. Enter the Matrix. There you go. Yeah, you played as like these side characters, and everybody was like, "Bro, why are we not playing as Neo?" And then I guess they heard the complaints and they were like, "All right, we got to make a game where you just play as Neo." And that was the Matrix Path of Neo. I remember playing that on PS2, and I remember that game was amazing, bro. I was like, this is the Matrix game that I wanted and was dreaming of. And the Matrix games have, I mean, just the idea of the Matrix, it has so much potential of being an amazing game, and it was really exciting to get that demo because I think it showed the potential. But yeah, man, I don't think I can blame Warner Bros for canceling it though, because when you saw how bad the Matrix 4, I think for most people it's just like, yeah, that didn't happen. For a lot of people, the Matrix 2 and 3 were not nearly as good as the Matrix 1. But I think people could accept the trilogy for what it was. And the Matrix 4, I think, was just so bad and got so many things wrong. I mean, it was so weird, dude. I'll never forget. It was like really what they chose to do with Neo in that movie. And like they tried to like it was just weird. Like he's reinserted into the Matrix and forgot the past, and like now they're trying to like reawaken him. Like it sounds like on paper a good idea, but then when you saw it in execution, you're like, this is stupid. Yeah, and Morpheus didn't return, or the actor that they had playing Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne, he didn't return. Uh, Hugo Weaving didn't return as Agent Smith, and they had some other guy that's supposed to be Agent Smith, but like with a different avatar or whatever. It was just so stupid. Like it didn't. None of it was working, and yeah, really weird, dude. Really weird. Cringe. A lot of it was cringe. Very sad though. The Matrix. I loved the Matrix growing up, man. I really did. The Matrix was one of my favorite things ever, and it had so much potential. You don't want to see things run into the ground, of course. But I was kind of excited. I'm like, damn, they're gonna make a big comeback with the Matrix, and then it just was like one of the worst things ever. And I'm like, okay, we just can't have good things anymore, I guess. There's only one Matrix movie as far as I'm concerned. I think a lot of people feel that way. I don't think the Matrix 2 and 3 were as bad as people make it sound, but there's no denying they weren't as good as the first. The Matrix 2, I think, was very much about showing like OP Neo, him achieving his full powerful potential and just making him really badass, but also kind of removing, the Matrix 1, what made it so good was like the fact that it's like the idea of him being the one is more interesting than seeing him as the one. And like the whole build up to that movie is at the very end, like you finally see it, like, oh my God, he's doing it. He's doing it, and like he's beginning to believe. And you only see it for a little bit, and that's it. And then, the idea of like, we're gonna give you a second movie where that's all you see. And then the third one was about, the bigger picture and winning the war and whatnot and against the machines. And it started to get a little bit loopy, a little bit wild, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Matrix movie so much. I remember the first time I ever saw the Matrix, I was really young. I think I was like 7 or 8 years old. I had no idea what the hell was going on. All I remember is like every time that scene came up where he's like, "We need guns, lots of guns." Every time I saw that, I was like, "It's about to go down." Yeah, doing the Superman thing at the end. Yeah, dude, the ending of the Matrix is phenomenal. He gets off the phone. You're not sure who he's talking to, and then suddenly he's flying, and then it ends with "Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine. I mean, yeah, I don't blame the sequels for not being able to live up to that. But yeah, that scene in The Matrix 2 when he's fighting all the Agent Smiths, you gotta admit that was pretty sick. That was cool. There is good action. Yeah, there's some really sick action sequences in the other two. Um, it's just that I think the pacing of the first movie is just what made it so good. Where there was some action here and there, but they saved like the big action, dude. One of the greatest scenes ever, just ever, is the fight sequence between Neo and Agent Smith in the subway. I mean, goddamn, dude. And then the whole chase sequence after that, the whole ending with Neo and Agent Smith, it's just so good. And if you flash forward to the third movie and the ending of that, where it's the final showdown between Neo and Agent Smith, it feels like it did lose the charm. Where it's like the first movie was grounded; they're actually like fighting hand to hand, kung fu, just trying to beat the shit out of each other in a subway. And then by the end of the third movie, they're literally flying around the city, kind of like Dragon Ball style and whatnot. And there's a lot of CGI, and I think it kind of took away a lot of the flair. That's true. Yeah, the only one of the Wachowskis I think worked on the Matrix Resurrections or whatever. The Animatrix. I think I remember seeing that as well, where they were like showing you different stories. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Guys, we have 4 more minutes, and then we're going to head over to the members lounge. Guys, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to drop that 10 bomb. Are we going to do it? Are we going to get to the 100 mark before today's stream ends? I don't know. I just got to put it out there, It's okay if we don't. But we got 3.5 minutes, and we'll wrap this up, and we'll head over to the members lounge for a little bit. I think the newest Matrix movie is a critique to the current state of cinema and movie studios doing sequels and reboots. They even tell you in the movie itself. Yeah, but I don't like that, Like, I do remember when The Matrix 4 came out, people were trying to, like, analyze it more in depth with me. Like, it's a commentary on modern day Hollywood and movie making. And I'm like, bro, that's not what the fans want The Matrix to be. We wanted a proper follow-up to the Matrix movies, that we grew up with. They didn't have to make the movie. If they were that jaded and upset, like they could have just said no and not make the movie. But yeah, wasn't a fan at all. Oh, really? Is that true? He was planning on making. I don't think you mean Matrix movies though, right? Constantine 2 is being made. Constantine 1 was pretty good. It wasn't like amazing, but it was pretty solid. I enjoyed the first Constantine. I'm a little nervous about the second one. We'll see. We'll see what happens. You got to be careful what you wish for when it comes to sequels. Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true, man. Trust me, I've learned that. 2020, The Last of Us Part 2, 2021, The Matrix Resurrections, and I'm just like, you know what? You know what, though? Please stop. Warner Brothers seems to have had a lot of problems for a long time now, or they still have problems, but yeah, not good. Broccoli Rob, are you serious? You serious, bro? The Devil was cool. The actor. Oh yeah. That the actor who played Peter Stormare was the actor who played the Devil in in Constantine, and he's in Until Dawn as Dr. Hill. That was a good movie. All right. Well, I'm just counting down now. We got 45 seconds. All right, guys. I'm going to do my outro. Thank you so much for hanging out today and tuning in to the stream. I appreciate all the support you guys have shown. If you dropped any member gifts, if you became a member, if you dropped any direct donations or super chats, thank you so much for the support. I can only do what I do here because you guys make it possible. We have an amazing community. Very grateful for that. Also want to just give a shout out to the people who watch the streams later on. I always try to do that because I know not everybody can catch the streams live, but there definitely are people who take time to watch the entirety of all the streams I put out after the fact when they're able to. So just a shout out to you guys as well. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. So we're going to head over to the members lounge. If you are a channel member, that's going to pop up in about a minute or two after this stream ends. And I'll see you guys over there. To everybody else, I will catch you tomorrow in the next stream. So until then, take care, everyone.